What's up, guys? My name's Stu, and today we're going to be looking at the top 10 premium ships to pick for the 2023 event campaign. Star Trek Online has released some pretty nice ships into the promo boxes and lock boxes over the past year, so this year's top 10 list is going to look a little different than last year's. That said, there are going to be some ships that are still here from last year's list because, well, frankly, the meta hasn't changed all that much, so some of these are still going to be really good options to pick. I'm going to start with the returning ships first, just to get those over with quickly, but don't worry, if you want to skip ahead, I'll chapter the video. First off is the D7 Miracle Worker Flight Deck Carrier. This is a really nice Miracle Worker ship, so it's really well suited for energy weapon builds, and it's a flight deck carrier, so it's going to have 2 hangar bays, so it's going to be really nice for pet builds as well. It has a secondary command seat as well, but it's only lieutenant level, so you're really not going to get much use out of that. But the real value of this ship is its starship trait, the Ruin of Our Enemies. This trait is really good for building up really impressive amounts of bonus damage because of just how high it's able to stack. There is a Federation version of this ship, the Constitution Miracle Worker Flight Deck Carrier, but sadly it does not have the same starship trait, though, like I said last year, I wouldn't blame you for picking that one because, I mean, it's so pretty. Actually, the Constitution is the ship I picked for last year's event campaign. Next up, the Mirror Warship. This one is also a variant of the Discovery-style Constitution class, but this one is more of an escort because it's a warship. Being a warship, this is going to have a much more tactical-focused bridge officer layout and console layout, but that also means it's not going to have an experimental weapon slot, instead having 8 normal weapon slots, kind of like a cruiser. The Mirror Warship is especially very much like just an escort and a cruiser mashed together because the Mirror Warship's bridge officer layout is unique in the fact that it has both a tactical and engineering commander level seat. The drawback is that this ship does not have a full specialization, instead only having a lieutenant commander intel seat. But that's still not a bad thing, because even at the lower levels, intel is still good for additional unconventional systems triggers. Though, like the previous ship, a lot of the Mirror Warship's value does come in its starship trait, Terran Goodbye. This trait is really good for building up crit chance, which is really important in a DPS build. Unless it's surgical strikes, then you really don't need any crit chance at all. The ship also has a pretty decent console on it as well. It's not super meta or anything, but it does have some nice passives on it that will increase your crit severity. Much like crit chance, crit severity is also very important for a DPS build. Next up on the list is the Deimos Pilot Destroyer. Now, last year this was on the list mainly because of its console, Immolating Phaser Lance, which is very powerful for not just phaser builds, but really for torpedo builds as well, because it's used in conjunction with a starship trait, which I will get to in a bit. But the ship has become even more valuable since the revamp to pilot bridge officer abilities, because now route reserves to weapons is actually a very powerful ability, so this ship is very nice to have. So yeah, if you like pilot ships, this is definitely a really nice choice to have just for a playable ship, but either way, the console is a must-have. Now, I said this pairs really well with a starship trait, and that brings us to our next starship on the list, the Crossfield Refit. The ship on its own is interesting, but not overly powerful. It's a Miracle Worker science vessel, which isn't a great pairing, but it is still a spearhead, so that does bring up some interesting possibilities, so you can go more weapons focused with it, so you can make a really nice do-side build with this thing. But its starship trait, Universal Designs, is really great for building up crit chance and crit severity, because what it does is you get a stack of that trait that gives crit chance and crit severity every time you activate one of your universal consoles. Which is why this pairs really well with Immolating Phaser Lance, because Immolating Phaser Lance doesn't have the usual 2-minute cooldown that most consoles have. Instead, it has a very low cooldown that allows you to build up charges of the console so you can fire it off every few seconds. This means you'll be able to build up stacks of Universal Designs that much more quickly. And now for the last of the repeats, the Temporal Light Cruiser. I've said on a number of occasions that I love this ship, largely because of just how freaking versatile it is. It's a temporal ship with really well-rounded bridge officer seating, so you can do pretty much anything on this thing. It has a 5-3 weapons layout, so it's good for forward-facing energy weapon builds. It also has a Lieutenant Commander command seat, so it can make a nice torpedo build. It also has a Lieutenant Commander science and universal seat, and that coupled with the fact that it's a temporal ship, you could probably make a decent EPG build on this thing as well. It wouldn't be amazing because it's not a science ship, so it doesn't have a secondary deflector, but I mean, you could do it. Like I said, it's a temporal ship, so you're going to have access to Recursive Shearing 3, which is good for pretty much any sort of damage build because that thing hits like a truck. Speaking of trucks, there's a very large one making a lot of noise outside my house. Go away! So yeah, couple all that with the fact that this is also the original Constitution class, or the refit Constitution class. Yeah, not only is this a really good ship, but it's also a very pretty ship. Okay, moving on to the new ships, and I'm going to apologize right now because technically this first ship isn't actually new because it was in the honorable mentions of last year's video, but I decided to move it up to the list because frankly I do really love this ship. The Bowel Sentry ship. Like the Crossfield refit, this is also a Spearhead science vessel, meaning it's going to have a 4-3 weapons layout instead of the usual 3-3 that most science vessels have. But this one's a full intel ship, so this one's actually going to be better for proper science builds because you're going to be able to generate more anomalies. But the main reason I like this ship so much is because of its console, Sentry Mode. Basically, locks you in place and then summons a bunch of smaller sentry ships to surround you, and then they just fire bowel anti-proton beams all over the place. It's crazy, and honestly, you're not going to see anything else kind of like that in Star Trek Online, at least not on any other ship. It is a very unique style of gameplay that I very much enjoy. Okay, now onto the stuff that's actually new, the Emerald Chain Intel Juggernaut. Okay, well, first off, it's a Juggernaut, so you know it's going to be a good ship, but this is also an Intel Juggernaut, so it's going to be really good for surgical strikes. But something that this has that other Juggernauts don't have is that because this is a 32nd century ship, it has a 32nd century cloaking device. So despite being a massive Juggernaut, you'll be able to play up the whole stealth aspect with this ship really nicely. It also has some cool animation stuff on it too, because the turrets on it will actually rotate to your target as you're firing at it. I always thought that was a really nice touch, and it's a level of immersion that you don't get with a lot of ships in Star Trek Online. Though I will say there is one downside to this ship, in that is it has a 4-4 weapons layout. I think a lot of people with this type of ship would have preferred a 5-3 weapons layout, because I know I would have. So in that case, I feel like a number of people are still going to prefer the Vaadwaur Juggernaut over this, and if you do, I mean, that's an option as well. That's why it was on last year's list. Or was it the year before? I don't remember. Moving on to another new ship, the Cheval Temporal Science Spearhead. I just realized all 3 science ships on this list are all spearheads. Weird. Now, the Cheval is that Vulcan ship from Star Trek Lower Decks that we saw near the end of Season 2. Now, remember how I said on the Bowel Sentry ship how it's better than the Crossfield refit because it had intel seating, so you're going to be able to get more anomalies with it? Well, this thing's a full temporal ship, so this is going to be even better than that. At least in terms of proper science vessels. The other two are still going to be better for Undecided builds. Whereas the Cheval actually goes in the other direction because it also has a secondary Lieutenant Commander command seat, so it's also good for a torpedo build. That's actually really nice because torpedoes and EPG builds actually pair really well together. Mostly because normally you don't want to split your aux and your weapons power like you have to do with a Undecided build, so it's a lot easier to set up a torpedo science build rather than a directed energy weapon science build. And because this is a full temporal ship and it has a Lieutenant Commander command seat, the Cheval is a fantastic platform for it. Plus it's a lower deck ship, and who doesn't love lower decks? Humorless weirdos, that's who. I'm gonna get yelled at in the comments for that. Now, the Cheval is a temporal ship with a Lieutenant Commander command seat. Now, this next ship is actually the reverse of that, because this one is the Sagan Command Cruiser. Not only is the Sagan a full command ship, but it also has a 4-4 weapons layout, which means this thing is going to be fantastic for a torpedo mine layer build. Not only are you going to be doing a ton of damage with those torpedoes in the front, but you're going to be able to lay out enough mines to blot out the sun. All that, coupled with the fact that this thing can use recursive shearing 1, this is going to be a very powerful torpedo build. Now, if you don't like torpedo builds, that's fine, because this ship will also make a fantastic tank build. In fact, I'm pretty sure that was the thinking going into this ship when you look at its starship trait. It's basically like Entwined Tactical Matrices, but with reverse shield polarity and feedback pulse. Meaning you're going to be able to keep those both active pretty easily, because activating one is going to activate the other as well with that starship trait. The last one on the list is also from Season 2 of Star Trek Picard, and that is the Excelsior II Intel Heavy Cruiser. This one just barely made it in to be eligible for this year's event campaign because this year you'll be able to pick any lockbox and promo ship that was released before December 7th. This was released on December 6th. So yeah, the Excelsior II, much like the Sagan, this is another 4-4 cruiser, but this one is better suited for energy weapon builds because it is an intel ship, so if you like surgical strikes, this is a good one to have. I know 5-3 would have been better on this thing, but what can you do? Though one of the big reasons this ship is on the list is because of its console. Experimental power redirection basically lets you fire off fire at will and beam overload at the same time with your weapons while firing off its own superpowered fire at will beam overload hybrid as well. And yeah, it makes your ship fire phaser beams in every freaking direction, and it's crazy and it's fun and I love it. And yeah, like I said, this is one of my favorite consoles in the game right now. This is fantastic. I love it. Probably not the most meta thing in the world, especially not on energy weapon builds, but like I said, it's just fun. It's the same reason why I love Sentry mode so much. I like it. But it also does help that, this is still a good ship. It's not the most amazing ship, but it is still a solid ship, and it's one that's fun to fly, and it's pretty too. So yeah, that is the top 10 list for the 2023 event campaign, but as usual, I do have some honorable mentions. First off is the Atlas Prototype Dreadnought. We all know why. It's because of the DPRM. Best console in the game. This has been common for years, but I only put it in honorable mentions because, frankly, I find the ship to be kind of underwhelming. Like, it's pretty, but I've never been that impressed with its stats, and I don't know, that's always kind of turned me off on the ship. And I don't know, maybe I'm just jaded because I've had the DPRM so long, but yeah. It's not on the list, but I will keep it in honorable mentions because, I mean, it is still a good pickup because of just how expensive it is and how good that console is. Next is the Mirror Angle Strikewing Escort. This one I'm pretty sure was on the list last year, or it was on honorable mentions, I don't remember. But this one is also here because of its Starship trait, Superior Area Denial, which is a game changer for pet builds. Basically, anytime you activate Fire at Will or Scatter Volley, your pets will also get both Fire at Will and Scatter Volley at the same time. Pair that with something like the Toduge fighter pets, and yeah, you're just looking at crazy amounts of Scatter Volley all over the place. The big reason that this ship is on the honorable mention side and not the actual list itself is because this was added to the 12th anniversary bundle last year. Meaning if you bought that bundle, you'll actually have the ship unlocked on your entire account, not just a single character unlocked like you would with the event campaign. So frankly, if you really like that style of gameplay, I do think that the 12th anniversary bundle would be a better buy in order to get the ship. And frankly, all the other ships in the 12th anniversary bundle are fantastic. So either way, that is a good pickup if you didn't already buy the other ships individually. And the last ship on the honorable mentions is here for the exact same reason, the Styx Terran Dreadnought Cruiser. Being a command dreadnought with a 4-4 weapons layout, this thing is a fantastic torpedo build and a really nice tank build as well. But again, this was a last-minute addition to the 13th anniversary bundle. So again, you could get this unlocked on your full account if you bought that bundle. But yeah, that is going to wrap things up for this top 10 list, plus, the honorable mentions, because I always have to be an overachiever with these things. Now, like I said earlier, the meta in Star Trek Online really hasn't changed all that much in recent years. So really, going back to my previous top 10 lists, I mean, while the lists have changed in the past, how many have I done? This is like the third one, I think. But so while the lists have changed, the previous ones, those are still pretty good options too. So it might be worth going back to go watch those as well, because maybe you like something on that better. But yeah, don't forget, folks, do your event TFOs every day because you don't want to fall behind in your progress on the event campaign. And remember, even after you've earned the prize for that specific event TFO, you can still keep earning bonus dilithium, and that's still going to add to progress to your event campaign as long as the event is live. What else? Oh, mandatory merch promotion right here somewhere. Go buy this shirt. It's funny. Link in the description. So, what are you guys picking up for the event campaign? I'm thinking the Sagan, because, well, it's a gorgeous ship and it is a really nice torpedo build, but honestly, I am still kind of considering the Cheval as well. What are you guys aiming for? One of these ships, a different premium ship, or are you going for the low buy crystals or the C-Store coupons? Let me know in the comments down below, and while you're down there, be sure to hit like and subscribe and hit that bell for notifications. If you would like to further support the channel, you can hit that join button and become a member, or you can hit the super thanks button, or again, the link to the merch store is in the description. Either way, thank you so much for watching. My name's Stu, and I will see you guys next time.